I've come to apologize. My last video upset some of you, where I said that if you're a Green Lantern fan, if you're a real Green Lantern fan, you probably won't enjoy the Lantern show, and understandably, some of you are upset, and I want to address that. I want to talk to you guys personally and say, I apologize for being 100% right. After I made a short of my first video, I got a lot of comments talking about how I need to give the show a chance, and it's only one episode in. Like, there's a collective hive mind of the same exact comment over and over.
It's only one episode in, it's only one episode in, give it a chance.
And I asked one of them what qualifies as giving it a chance, and he said,
you have to watch the entire series, and then you have an opinion.
Bro, this is a 8-episode series. I've watched an hour of it. That is a fourth of the Snyder Cut. That's at least half of the Morbius film. If you watch half of the Morbius film and then say, I don't want to watch the rest, I would understand why you don't want to watch the rest. You don't need the whole context to watch it. In fact, how stories kind of are structured is that the first episode should hook you. This isn't some 24-episode series on television where one episode is like 40 minutes, even 20 minutes, and normally I'd give it like a 3-episode bias, right? This is an 1/8 of the show. And like I said in the last video, I've read a Green Lantern comic book before, so I mean, what are we doing here? But a 1-hour-long episode should at least hook me for excitement for the rest of the series, and quite frankly, that first episode didn't do it. But there's hope. I've watched the second episode, so let's break this down. And we're gonna go over it pretty quickly because I actually want to spend time talking about more than just a recap of the show. But don't worry, I'll summarize it just for you because I know you also don't want to spend hours of your life on this like I've already unfortunately subjected myself to. But it's okay. It's a burden I'm willing to bear for you, the subscriber, and the non-subscriber who should consider subscribing. So at the beginning of the show, Hal Jordan is teaching John Stewart how to fly. John Stewart does not figure out how to fly. Instead, he makes a construct of a green bird, and then he takes off the ring and gives it to Hal Jordan, but the green bird stays for some unknown reason. Apparently, John Stewart is able to project this without the ring, but he's not able to fly. Hal Jordan gives him a plane ticket to go get his lantern battery from his home, and so John Stewart leaves to go do that because his ring is pretty much at 0%. Hal Jordan goes back to the football field to check out the metal detectors, and as he checks on them, he realizes that they don't detect metal. So naturally he goes to talk to the sheriff and ends up in the town meeting and gets himself kicked out. It's a whole ordeal, but basically he finds out that Will Macon, Mr. Ranchman, wants him to go ahead and leave town. So Hal Jordan ends up going to the morgue, where we're reminded that this series isn't for kids. This is an HBO series, and we get introduced to alien dead doll. So he pulls the butt naked alien impersonating a human and all the way down to all the family jewels, and takes the alien's body and a couple other ones from, the shooting from the first episode, and takes them to the football field where he puts them through the metal detector and discovers that it's not a metal detector, it's an alien detector. But meanwhile, John Stewart is at Hal Jordan's mansion, and apparently Hal Jordan got a mansion. He has one because it was gifted to him by someone he saved their son. It doesn't matter. And John Stewart goes and finds the lantern battery is being housed in Hal Jordan's closet, where he sees the Green Lantern uniform. It seems to be green now instead of the brown from the trailers. It's almost like we're doing a reenactment of the first Sonic movie and the backlash from that. John Stewart ends up taking the battery from a pocket dimension, which, cool, there's a little Easter egg in the thing, that's great. He takes it from the pocket dimension as well as Hal's uniform, even though Hal does not want him to take the uniform. By the way, the bird is still following John Stewart even when he's jumped by, classic goons. These goons ask John Stewart how Hal Jordan is projecting this bird from so far away, and John Stewart informs them that he's doing the projection, and they ask how he's doing it without a ring. He's like, I don't know. And so then they ask him about manhunters and what he knows about them, and John Stewart confesses he knows nothing about manhunters. They inform him that their intention is to recruit him to go back to Nebraska and find out who is the manhunter disguised as a human in the town, and that they were buddies with the guy who exploded in the interrogation room from the first episode. So apparently in this version, manhunters are able to disguise themselves as humans. The leader of this group of alien goons, I guess leader goons, alludes to John Stewart that the Green Lanterns weren't the original peacekeeping, or at least not the first peacekeeping organization in the galaxy. They hold this device to John Stewart's head that allows him to experience the pain or memories or something of their people who were all wiped out by the Manhunters, which was honestly a good opportunity to, I don't know, show me and not tell me that the Manhunters destroyed your world. It's supposed to be like this grand space thing. I kind of want to see them, do the Order 66 on this planet. It's kind of part of the galactic story, but I guess I don't get to see that. I guess I'm just going to be told about it and never get to see any of this stuff. So anyway, the goons want to basically find this Manhunter and kill them because they want to seek justice for what happened to their people. They inform John Stewart that the Manhunter disguised themselves as one of their people and used that disguise to manipulate people and ultimately wipe them out. I'm used to the Jeff Johns version of the Manhunters, where they're more of these unfeeling robots that was like supposed to be the peacekeeping organization because they don't have emotions, and so they are going to be, more objective in their process.
No man escapes the Manhunters.
No man escapes the Manhunters!
And they end up failing when they come to the realization that if you have emotions, you'll do evil, and so they're just going to wipe out any being that has any sort of emotion. This seems to be pulling a lot from the Millennium storyline, which I couldn't tell you much about, but I'll give you a brief rundown from what I understand. Basically, it was a big event in DC that most of us try to forget, where they basically do Marvel's Secret Invasion with the Skrulls before the Marvel Secret Invasion with the Skrulls. Basically, in each ongoing series, someone close to the protagonist, so Superman, Batman, etc., is actually a Manhunter in disguise. Lana Lang from Superman ended up becoming a Manhunter, apparently, and so did Commissioner Gordon, and it was very short-lived before that retcon. And it turns out the entire town of Smallville was actually a breeding ground for Manhunters, which seems to be kind of the direction they're going with this little town in Nebraska. So these goons send John Stewart to go find the Manhunter, and he has 48 hours to find out who it is and identify them before they're going to show up and try to blow up the city. So they've introduced a little ticking clock here, but John Stewart is not allowed to tell Hal Jordan about any of this conversation. Meanwhile, in Nebraska, Hal Jordan gets pulled over by Lady Sheriff, who pretty much upset at him about, driving around with 3 dead bodies in his car. So Hal Jordan basically is like, I want to talk to Mr. Macon of the ranch and find out about what's going on with these alien detectors that are clearly somehow belonging to him. Because Hal Jordan knows that this is pretty advanced technology even for human beings. They go up to the ranch. Hal Jordan makes a fool of himself, and gets himself shot and ends up in the hospital. At the hospital, Lady Sheriff is at his bedside, and they have a little heart-to-heart where she asks him about Sinestro, because apparently Hal Jordan just sleep rambles about Sinestro. Hal Jordan doesn't really want to answer anything about it, but apparently she could just chat GPT information about Sinestro on her phone, and that's, I guess, common knowledge in James Gunn's DCU. This is where one of the creators of the show, David Lindelof's talents really shine. So Hal Jordan basically asked why she was getting in the way of his investigation if she knew that there were alien detectors on the field. So she says that she knew about the alien detectors and assumed that since they didn't go off, there was no alien there. I think an exploded interrogation room might tell a different story. But she says, and I quote,
I didn't want Billy's dad,
Mr. Macon,
insurrecting the out of everyone and getting them all paranoid about invasion.
This is a message to the creators of the show. When you're making a period piece, you have to use language from that era. And this is a period piece. This is set in 2016. And as I recall, as established in your last episode, Barack Obama is still the president. So the term insurrection is not exactly a popular term at this time, and no one's really using it for just about anything. It'd be more likely that a sheriff in this town might say that she doesn't want Billy's dad riling up the townfolk. But no, you want to convey a message and, do this entire pandering thing so you can get your clicks on that and, ooh, look at this comparison. Art imitates real life. Okay, dude. So I just want spacemen with cool rings to hurl green things in the sky and fight each other, and But instead you're just gonna hit me with whatever, opinion you have that you're trying to force on me. Like, goodness, just let me enjoy some entertainment. Gosh, I'm trying to go here for escapism. That's why I watch entertainment, to be entertained, not to be preached at. But wait, I forgot. Again, David Lindelof, so it has to be a commentary on something, right? I've seen the Watchmen TV series. All the episodes, by the way. I gave it a chance, and yeah, it really freaking sucked. And the signs are all here in this one too. Back to the story, Hal notices that there's not really much of a medical staff at the hospital, nor are there any other patients, and a lot of the equipment there has basically been untouched. The sheriff tells him that that's normal. It's a small town. There's not a lot of people, getting shot and going to the hospital like Hal Jordan. She also name drops Gotham. Again, a little delicious Easter egg that, oh my goodness, all the fanboys can say, look, they did the comic book thing and now it's a comic book adaptation. It's not a comic book adaptation if that's all you do, buddy. And while we're on the topic, let's talk about comic accurate, okay? A lot of people throw around the term comic book accurate, but I think it needs a definition, and I'm going to provide mine. You're welcome to disagree. You can rebuke my definition, but I think measuring if something is comic accurate is kind of synonymous with if it's a good adaptation of a source material of another work. And I think there's three main things you have to consider in whether or not it's a good adaptation, and it's actually really similar to what the legal system uses for copyright infringement. The first is a substantial similarity test. Basically, it's a way to determine if an ordinary observer would look at these two works, the original and the adaptation, and see a substantial amount of the original elements, the original story, in the appropriated work or in the adapted work, as it would be in the case of adaptations. The second one would be the extrinsic versus intrinsic test. Basically, this would be kind of using an objective standard to measure the similarities between the original work to the adapted work. Most times this is applied to things like plots, characters, but can extend to themes and styles as well as dialogue. But I think this one is the key thing most people are meaning when they're saying comic book accurate. And that's what we call the heart of the work test, or qualitative similarity. Basically in court, it's a quality over quantity kind of measurement. See, the courts would not only look at how much of the work was taken, the quantity of it, but would look if the person infringed had used the heart of the work or the core of the story, the qualitative part of it. Basically, did they take the indispensable creative expression that is the core of the story or the property? And this applies the same with adaptions. Are they taking the heart of the work, the core of the story, of the elements, of the plot, of the characters? So how does this apply to comic book adaptions? I mean, a great example of it is The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is probably the least aesthetically like the original Batman comic books of really any era, but it keeps the heart of the character, the core of his story, the rising above his fear, the seeking justice, not vengeance. All these elements are pretty present in Bruce Wayne in this story. You could take Christian Bale's Batman and all the core elements of him and put him in the comic books, and it would be the same character at their core, even despite the aesthetic differences. Same goes for Lanterns. I mean, it's got none of the aesthetic qualities, and I don't necessarily need it to, even though I think that would be a huge help to it. The biggest problem is that at its core, they completely dismantle and belittle Hal Jordan in favor of building up John Stewart, when John Stewart really could have just been a great hero in his own right without Hal Jordan even being part of the story or need to be torn down. But as it goes, they have to tear down my heroes, and here we are again with them tearing down this iconic hero from DC. So what's the next thing they do to help tear down my heroes? John Stewart returns to town and happens to run into the grandma he slept with from the first episode.
That all you got? My grandma is hotter than you.
John Stewart, being a somewhat honorable man, says that he wouldn't have slept with her if he had known that she was married, and she says that she's glad he didn't know because that's what a respectable person would do. But you go, girl. She also takes this opportunity to complain about whiteness. Look, I don't really like to talk about this in my videos, but James Gunn and Tom King and the others, well, they did it.
That son of a bitch brought the war to us 2 years ago.
I didn't bring it up. They brought it up. So how does that disclaimer apply to this? Well, let me quote you this grandma. She asked John Stewart what he thinks of, Will Macon, and he says he's, a little weird, and she's like, and I quote,
White men have the privilege of being eccentric. White men with money, they can do whatever they want.
Then John Stewart questions why she's with him, and she's like, well, you know, he really likes me. And John Stewart's like, well, a lot of people probably like you. And she's like, no, there are no men that like me that can give me what he can give me as far as, you know, money and security and all those things. So not only is she a cheater, but she's a gold digger as well.
No, I ain't saying she a gold digger.
So John Stewart says, and I quote,
So you put up with a deeply weird white man who has a savior complex just to live the life?
and she inevitably asks him,
Hey, how's your white man?
referring to Hal Jordan. I know this is like the typical argument, but literally it applies so perfectly here. If I change the color mentioned in this scene, if I take this 5-letter word and replace it with another 5-letter word in all the places it's mentioned, this series would be canceled in about 5 seconds. So anyway, John Stewart tells her that Hal Jordan's been treating him as an errand boy the entire episode, and he's not really sure if he can trust him. And she says, if you have to ask that question, then you already know the answer. Okay, cool. So, or, hero assassination, great. Hal Jordan and John Stewart meet up again, and Hal Jordan tells John that he thinks there's something sus about the ranch and this whole thing, and he's not leaving until he gets to the bottom of what's on that ranch compound. And the two of them get into this little cat fight where John Stewart's saying how much of a better guy he is and that he brought back the suit for Hal Jordan and Hal Jordan doesn't want to wear it, but John Stewart's like, well, it's because I have a respect for the suit and you don't. Cool. During their cat fight, John Stewart tells him that he's actually kind of a better lantern than him because he can hold a construct even without a ring, which might explain later why Nathan Fillion has a ring and John Stewart's supposed to be Green Lantern in the next film. So is there only one ring and he can just do it without it? Kind of a weird change, but all right. Hal Jordan takes a moment to recite the oath and recharge the ring that has been dead since the beginning of the episode. And he does it in the laziest way. It's literally like a...
Impressing black side, no,
I don't know if you realize this ring is like the Excalibur of items. It is the most powerful weapon in the universe, and you treat it like nothing, which I think is what they're going for. But what a complete character assassination of the greatest Green Lantern ever put on the page. John Stewart tells Hal Jordan about the kidnapping and asks him about manhunters, which Hal Jordan refuses to answer. After John Stewart goes to bed, Hal Jordan puts on a uniform, which they have now color corrected to green. Hal Jordan in the middle of the night launches up into space with effects that look like they're the CW, circa Smallville. And he goes to the prison from the trailers where he confronts Sinestro. And this is the first time we're seeing any, real space in the show. And again, this is like 2 hours in. That's a whole movie's runtime in that we're finally seeing this. And Hal Jordan talks to Sinestro in prison and asks him if he knows anything about manhunters, and Sinestro asks him to tell him about John Stewart. That's where the episode ends. So was this better than episode 1? Yes, but I mean, the bar is below sea level. Like, I don't really know how to measure that at that point. Yes, there are Easter eggs and mentions of things like Gotham and the power battery being in a pocket dimension and the costume, and they have those comic booky elements that'll get, enough people on the gun side to go, well, you see, they did do the comic book thing, but all of it is hollow. It has no substance behind it. It's just an aesthetic thing that really means nothing. I mean, for all the people who are defending this, saying that the green doesn't matter, are the same people who are looking at these little Easter eggs and these little mentions and saying, see, you got what you wanted, while it's completely hollow. Like, they're right, the green doesn't necessarily matter if the characters were still true to who they are in the source material, but you are completely assassinating their character and, deconstructing them into nothing. I mean, I watched James Gunn gun down Hal Jordan in the first episode, and now he gunned down his entire reputation in the second. John Stewart is kind of just a complete Mary Sue, or whatever they called it for a guy. I mean, he's just completely perfect and better than Hal Jordan in every way, from personality to willpower to being fearless. So yeah, I guess there's no character growth. So what's even the point of the story if there's no arc for him? He's just a stagnant character at this point. And I don't really have hope for the later episodes. I mean, a lot of people are saying give it more time, but I mean, those same people coped that they were going to retcon things like, I don't know, Jor-El and Lara sending Superman to conquer and grape women on Earth, and then Supergirl comes out and they double down on that element. And I'm just gonna say it, that grandma is definitely a manhunter, if not the whole town, which is probably gonna be some allegory for some propaganda statement that they want to make. And look, this could be a decent show. I think there's a difference between a measurement of, is a show good, or is it a good comic book show or a good adaptation? So this could be a good detective show. It could be a great detective show if they weren't so on the nose with a lot of things, but the problem is that you're trying to adapt Green Lantern. This could be a 10 out of 10 detective series and still be a 0 out of 10 Green Lantern adaptation. The quality of the show really depends on, are you going to keep the heart of the source material or not? At least for me. But what makes this show worse is that they turned John Stewart into a political statement. I mean, a lot of the people my age grew up with the Justice League cartoon where John Stewart was really the only Green Lantern in it, beyond a couple mentions of Kyle Rayner and a cameo. Like, it was pretty much just John Stewart, and nobody was really bothered that Hal Jordan wasn't in it, beyond like the fact that we would have liked to see him. Like, nobody was like,
John Stewart took Hal Jordan's place, and this is some sort of race swapping of the character or whatever.
like, no one cared. It was fine. You could have just done that and actually avoided any comparisons to, you know, the Ryan Reynolds one, because you'd just be doing a different character. But again, like, I can't even really commentate on the show without having to bring it up because, like I said, Gunn and the other creatives brought the war to us. I didn't want to talk about it, but they really want to talk about it, apparently. Quite frankly, I don't want to be preached to in my content. I don't care what angle you're coming from, what religion you're coming from, what political side you're coming from. I just want to be entertained, not be propagandized to in this blatant way. And quite frankly, it's really lazy writing to just make everything an allegory for whatever belief system you have. But this show will probably do just fine because it has all those little buzzwords and elements and themes that get the politically inclined seals to clap endlessly until they find another intellectual property to just completely dismantle and destroy. So I guess I'll have to wait till episode 3 to see how they destroy that too. This is going to be a very painful next 6 episodes. Thanks for watching my rant and summary. I hope this spared you at least a little bit of time of seeing this series, and if it didn't spare you it and you watched it too, I hope you didn't have to go through as much pain as I did. If you liked this, give it a like. If you didn't like it, you watch the whole thing, so you're kind of, you know, legally required to give me a like. And if you agree, tell me in the comments. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. If you disagree, I'd love to hear your opinion, but ultimately, I'm the guy with the talking spoon, so honestly, at the same time, you've got to give me a subscribe for the next one to see if you like the next one, or you could even dislike the next one. You could watch it too. Either way, I don't know. You can do whatever you want. You have to give me a like. Okay, bye. Well, I'm the guy with the talking spoons.